Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Attorney Dion Michelle Green for Love, Life, and the Law. And I'm going to entitle this segment, Under the Law, subsection, Cases That Haunt Me. Now, most of the cases I'm going to discuss are public record, so I would never divulge attorney-client privileged information. So I wanted to just say that up front. These are all cases that you could actually look up if you had the ability to do so, and if you had the desire to do so. I will not say the names of the clients because I just think that's the right thing to do. And this is not necessarily about them per se. It's about the effect that those cases had on me, and just to give people an overview. You say you want to be an attorney, or, you know, I hear people talk so bad about people in the legal profession and this, that, and the other, but the truth of the matter is you have no idea what some of these people have been through. I had the privilege of working with Jerry Boyle. Jerry Boyle is the person who represented Jeffrey Dahmer. And I know it may seem strange to people, why would you say that's a privilege? Because it wasn't about Jeffrey Dahmer per se. It was about somebody that was willing to make sure that the legal processes were correct. I had a friend when I was in my first job in the military. He was a Hispanic gentleman, and he represented somebody that was a neo-Nazi. I asked him, I said, how can you do it? And I was still green, and I tell you right now, I've dealt with loads of cases that may have made my hair stand on end or my flesh crawl since then. But what he said to me, I've carried with me a long time. He said, it's not about the person, it's about the process. Our job as attorneys is to help ensure that the processes work properly. I hear a lot of people talk about how people with money get different types of justice. When that happens, the processes are not working properly. One of the only reasons that the OJ case was fascinating to me was because when they interviewed me about it when I was in law school, it was after OJ had been acquitted for the murders of Mr. Goldman and Miss Brown. And I said, I don't know those people. And it's not that I don't care. I have sympathy for them, but I don't know them. What I wanted to see was whether money was a factor. And when you think about that particular case, in addition to race and all those other things being a factor, money was a factor. OJ had Johnny Cochran. OJ had some of the best attorneys on the planet working for him. And they pointed out every deficiency in the process. So I say all of that to say this: the law is not perfect, whether in our country or in any other country. It is a process. But I wanted to kind of put a face in front of some of the issues that we as legal professionals deal with. So when people are vilified, maybe you can think twice, because maybe you don't know. You definitely don't know all the facts. Nobody would know all the facts about the OJ case. There were even sessions that were being had outside of the camera. They have sessions where it's just the judge and the defense team and the prosecution that you would never hear. You would never know about. There's evidence in that case that people would never know about. There were things that were left out that people would never see. So, but this is just putting a face with it. So, a few cases that haunt me. I had a case where I was defending a gentleman who had been accused of bribery, graft, and theft. And so basically it was, they allegedly stole money while they were in Iraq. They allegedly bribed people to help them get the money home. And then they hid it in a way that it wouldn't be detected. This young man, he had a DUI in his record from when he was really young, but other than that, he was a stellar service member. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you are a stellar service member if you've had a DUI. My point is that he was punished for his DUI. Thank God no one was killed, and he moved forward, and when he moved forward, he did a great job. When the case was brought to me, he was offered the opportunity to have something called a Article 15, which is kind of like a misdemeanor. And they offered to give him the Article 15 with no punishment. No punishment whatsoever. So he would basically have had the Article 15 in his file. And that could have been a career ender. But he was not going to be punished. They weren't going to take any rank. They weren't going to take any money. They weren't going to make him be restricted in any way. But that was what they were offering. When I told him that, that young man said, I can't accept guilt for something that I didn't do. So I spent weeks putting together a packet so that I could give this to the decision maker. And in the military, the decision maker is the commanding general. So I could give it to the decision maker so that they could see the depth of this man's feelings about pleading guilty to or being held accountable for something that he honestly believed he didn't do. And again, I don't know if he did it or not. That wasn't my job. My job was to defend him. My job was to figure out whether the process worked. So I put together a 400-page document, handed it in, waited for a response, never got a response. So we went to trial. We went through the trial. It was 3 or 4 days. At the end of the trial, the client was found not guilty of all counts. And I had a co-counsel, so please, I mean, again, I feel like I'm a very good attorney, but it's timing, it's facts, it's your witness and your, for us, we call him an accused, the defendant. It has all that stuff. So I'm not going to say that it was me that did such a spectacular job, but he was acquitted of all charges. But here's what haunted me. At the end of the trial, the chief prosecutor came up to me and said, look, see, the process worked exactly how it was supposed to. And I never did give your packet to the commanding general for his consideration. I want y'all to think about that. This young man's whole life stood in the balance. And the person who was charged with ensuring justice was done didn't even show me the common decency, didn't show the client the common decency to give the information that was provided that could have kept him from going to court at all. It haunts me because I'm not even quite sure what the best way was for me to handle that. I'm not going to go into what I did do, but I will tell you that that's something that still eats at me. If I had it to do over again, I don't know if I would have done anything different, but it just seemed so unfair, so improper. Very unsettling. So the next case that still haunts me is I was a defense attorney, and in most of these are defense attorney cases. I was a defense attorney, and I had a client, a female client, who was accused of having child pornography on a computer. Now, the reason that this was all detected is because the computer came from a place where you rent furniture and computers, equipment from, and the IP address was apparently being tracked. And then she was investigated, she was found out, and then they came and arrested her. Well, you know, as you can imagine, she had been abused in the past, and that contributed to her affiliation with child pornography. Now, I'm not even going to get into child pornography, you know, how, you know, wrong that all is, because remember, it wasn't about what she did. It was about, that was my responsibility. And so I defended her to the best of my ability. But what haunts me about that case is she had a daughter. And at some point during that process, it was unearthed that there was banter back and forth on the internet about something that could happen with her daughter. Now, as an attorney, there's nothing that I can do about what happens with that person after they leave incarceration, because she did go to jail. But what about her daughter? What about her daughter? I pray that we got the case settled before something happened to her daughter. But now she has a mother who's in prison. If she ever finds out that her mother was talking about her on the internet and what her mother was convicted of, I mean, just what about her daughter? And then the last one I'll share, and again, like I said, I'm just putting a face on this. And this is from somebody who was on both sides of the table, the prosecution side and the defense side. So when I was a prosecutor in federal court, I met a family, and it was parents of a deceased young man. And the facts of the case were that the young man was married to a young lady, and the young lady was a civilian, but the young man was a service member. And at some large military installations, they have what they call special assistant United States attorneys. So I served in that capacity for a while, which means we prosecuted civilians that committed crimes on military enclaves or military bases. So the young man was married to this young woman, and these are the facts. This is what she said. This is what the police report said. I think it's uncontroverted, so I'm going to give them to you as they were. The facts are that this young lady and her husband, her military husband, were watching a adult film, and they had pulled their mattress into the living room to watch this film, and they were being intimate. And the young lady said, I want to invite somebody into our relationship so that we can, have 3 people, for intimacy. And the young man said, really? Well, what about blank? Susie, Mary, Stacy, whatever her name was. What about her? That young lady got so incensed that he actually gave her a name of somebody for something that she had recommended. She went in the kitchen and got a knife and stabbed him in his chest. And that one stab cut an artery or vein, and literally it killed him. So I met the family. And here are the things that haunt me about that case. The first thing that haunted me about that case was that the young man was a twin. And his twin brother had died while in the military in a water accident. He drowned. These parents, it was their only 2 children. So the first twin died in a fluke incident where they drowned. The other twin got killed by their spouse from one stab wound over something nonsensical. They didn't have any more children. They didn't have any grandchildren. That lineage died right there with those 2 horrific events. Haunting. The next thing that haunted me about that case was I was in the courtroom. We were going through some of the preliminary hearings, and the lady, the wife that killed the service member, she was on the stand kind of just talking about having bipolar disorder. All these things were going on. And as soon as the testimony ended and the judge left the room, she walked up to the stenographer or the court reporter and said, "Can I get a copy of that?" There's this movie called Primal Fear. And she reminded me so much of the gentleman that was the killer in Primal Fear. And if any of you saw that movie, the guy would say, "Yeah, I told you I was losing time. I mean, he had this gambit down pat to the point where his attorney got him acquitted because he thought that the guy actually had some kind of psychological problem, but he was just playing him. And when I told the family about it, I said, her behavior reminds me a lot of this Primal Fear movie. The mother of the decedent said she knows that whole movie by heart. In the end, the young lady's bipolar disorder was a mitigating factor, and even though she was found guilty of involuntary homicide, she only got 6 months in jail. Now, if I ever felt like I had failed someone, it would have been that family, because I honestly believe that young lady deserved more time in prison for killing their son. But the way the federal rules worked and with her mitigating factors, that was all she was eligible for. That case still haunts me. I'm saying all of this because I want people to know that when you're bad-mouthing attorneys, and yeah, there's some crazy ones. I mean, there's some people out here, we've seen even a lot of politicians are attorneys, and there's some people that say and do some stuff that is just abhorrent. I want you to know that there are 100 times more people like me who are just doing what we can to make sure that the proper punishment is meted out, or that people get the right amount of money for damages that they suffered, or that people are attempting to make our country safer by getting criminals off the streets. And these are the kind of things that we live with, see, and deal with every day. You don't have to have sympathy for me. I'm not expecting you to have empathy. I just want you to know. I know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. But the biggest thing I know is that you got to keep God up top. And if it hadn't been for me keeping God up top, I'm not sure I would be mentally stable enough to still be sitting in front of you, telling you thank you for watching Love, Life, and the Law. Attorney Deon Michelle Green. Ciao.